We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, February 7th. This meeting is being video and audio recorded for future cable broadcast. Please silence all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. And if I could have a motion to formally open our meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Tebs?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mr. Hellcott?
Yes.
Mrs. Downing?
Yes.
Thank you.
If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to start with approval of minutes, payroll, and warrants. So if I could request a motion of approval, please, for the minutes of December 6th, 2023.
So moved.
2022.
2022. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
If I could request another motion of approval, please, of the minutes of January 10th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And finally, approval of the payroll and warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have no one signed up to be on delegation this evening, so we'll move past that agenda item. We have no old business. Moving right into new. Dr. Bailey, for your superintendent's report.
Yes. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask if we could take a couple of things out of order tonight, just as I know we have some guests who they'll present first, if it's okay with you, so that they can leave and not listen to the rest of the meeting.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So under the business manager's report, I'd like to start with the Select Energy Solar Canopy presentation with Mr. Alan Giles. He's the Senior Business Development Manager, and I would ask that he go to the podium. Good evening, Mr. Giles.
Hi, folks.
Good evening.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Boy, that was the quickest roll that I've ever been in a school committee. Usually it's 45 minutes to an hour before I even get close.
Welcome to stay.
Well, thank you for being expeditious. As the introduction, I'm from an organization out of Hopkinton, Mass. Called Select Energy, and we've been working with the superintendent on the opportunity to implement a renewable energy strategy here at the school to help offset the cost and manage the costs for electricity moving forward for the next 20, 25 years. Thank you. A little bit about Select. Started back in 2009, as I said, in Hopkinton, Mass. Majority of our work is working with state, municipal, and school districts on implementing solar energy strategies in various different forms to help offset electricity costs and manage those costs. We're close to 800 installations over the last 14 years. We're over 100 employees now. And the way this pretty much works is we design a system that works best for the asset at the school. And we actually own the asset. We maintain and insure the asset, and we service the asset for the duration of the project. And what we ask the school department to do is enter into a long-term agreement with us called the Power Purchase Agreement, which fixes the cost for the kilowatts produced by the solar that is used directly at the school behind the meter, rather than asking for the electricity coming from the utility company. I'm having some issues today. We do this through an organization, a nonprofit organization called Power Options. Power Options was started back in the 80s when the state deregulated electricity, and it was set up as a buying consortium for municipalities. And they started, go ahead, sorry. And here we go. And they started by aggregating its members, mostly towns, and going out and buying up long-term electric contracts and trying to fix those prices. And they moved into natural gas. And 10 years ago, the members started asking about solar and renewable energy solutions. So Power Options went out, did an RFP, went to all of the solar installation companies throughout New England and had them bid for the work. And we actually won that first award to do small projects. And then 3 years later, we won the award to do all the solar projects. And just recently, we went through the third RFP process and won that award. And under Mass General Law in this organization, because they go out and do the RFPs, the members can leverage that RFP process and implement the services with us instead of going out and managing their own RFP. In the RFP process, they actually dictate to us what we can charge for an asset based on the size of the asset, the type of the asset, and more importantly, they tell us how much we can actually make. They cap our margin on all our projects. Everything's transparent. Power Options actually reviews all the costs associated with the project on your behalf, and then works with you to negotiate out that power purchase agreement. The way we come up with a rate for this is there's a lot of federal and state incentives associated with implementing solar. What we do is we take the cost of the system and we buy down the system based on all of these incentives. So what the balance is left over, we try to spread those costs out over 20, 25 years, and then charge for it based on the kilowatts that are actually produced by the system. These are some of the types of organizations we work with. We've done well over 50 schools now. I think that particular number, geez, I've done 50 schools. A lot of municipal buildings, town halls, a lot of parks and recreation buildings. We do a lot of nonprofits, especially YMCAs and boys clubs who have high energy loads. And we do a lot of state agencies. We're DCAM certified, so we've actually been rolling through all the state universities, implementing solar canopies, roofs, and batteries. Framingham State, Bridgewater State, Salem State, and we're doing the community colleges right now. We're at Cape Cod Community College. We're just finishing a new STEM building, putting canopies and solar on top of the roof. We do a lot of private colleges too. Stonehill College is one of our better projects where we actually did a solar canopy over the whole parking lot of the whole campus that produces 100% of the electricity for the whole Stonehill campus. Just some of the references, some of the towns that we've been doing work with, a lot of Central Mass. My focus is here I work from Fall River out to Provincetown, up to Quincy, High in southeastern Massachusetts, and that's pretty much my focus. This is an area view of what the proposed solution would look like. When I met with Mr. Willett, you were just in the middle of finishing up that brand new roof over at the elementary school. And I looked at him and said, you know, what can I do on your roofs? And he said, you're not touching them. I don't want anything on my roofs. And then I got up and I took a look, and it made a lot of sense. If you can look at this school, you see there's a lot of different roofs and a lot of different elevations, and it's kind of difficult to put solar on the roof of the middle school efficiently. Same with the elementary school, a lot of different roof planes. It was kind of difficult. So the next solution is to look at the parking lots. They're wide open, they're nice and sunny, and can produce a lot of electricity. So my goal is to take a look at the electricity bills for both the schools and try to design a system that can drive that electric bill as close to zero as I possibly can. And then I took in a lot of input from the superintendent, who said, I would like an outdoor classroom. So we actually designed an outdoor classroom with one of the canopies, And in addition to that, we have canopy to the south that you can see that's parking over the administration area. And then the large blue square, that's pretty much the main public parking area. We actually cover it with a span. The canopy to the northwest, I've asked my engineers to take that out of the mix because I feel that the other three, the two smaller canopies and the large canopy would probably be enough to support producing all the electricity for both of the schools. In addition to that, because this building is a shelter, we thought it'd be pretty important to implement a battery solution. And the purpose for a battery is for many cases. The first case is by law, if the utility electricity goes out on the street, the solar panels are not allowed to produce electricity, no matter whether it's sun or not. It completely shuts down. So the street could be down for a week, it could be a great day out, sun, and we're not producing any electricity. But if you put a battery into the mix, just like a generator, it disconnects itself from the grid, so no electricity can go upstream. The electricity in the battery supports the school, just like the generator. But when the solar wakes up in the morning, it can backfeed the battery so that you can have a continuous flow of electricity from the solar panels and extend the time period for having emergency electricity here rather than running the generator over and over again. When we do this installation, we actually integrate the generator with the battery so that when it disconnects from the grid and the battery is running the school, and it might be at night when the solar is not producing any electricity, the battery says, hey, I'm not comfortable with the amount of electricity left. Generator, please turn on and fill me back up. So the generator is there now supporting the battery, and it only runs when the battery needs it to run. So you're not using as much fossil fuel to run those generators, and you're not putting so much wear and tear on the generator. The other part that the battery does is in the electric bill for the schools, it's kind of broken up into 4 parts. The first part is just the general customer charge based on the type of electricity that you have. If you look at your bill at home, you always see this customer charge. It's usually about $6 to $10 for every time you get an invoice. Well, the school's invoice is $250 every time you can charge. That's one part. The next part is the per kilowatts that the school uses over the course of the month. The other part, and that's broken up into 2 parts. One for the supply, which the school and the town buy on a contract to try and lower that. And then the other part is the delivery side, which the utility company charges for, and those prices are always increasing. Inside of that, they have what's called a delivery charge or a demand charge. A demand charge looks at all your usage over a half-hour period over the course of the month, and it picks that half hour where you use the most electricity during the month. And then it comes up, it has a tariff rate that's approved by the state, and it charges you for the privilege of having that electricity. It has nothing to do with the electricity that you actually use. It has everything to do with the demand you're asking the grid to be able to supply the electricity. So when we have a battery in place, the battery is actually watching, it can monitor the amount of electricity that you're asking for from the grid in addition to what the solar is bringing in. So the battery says, hey, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all the lights are on, everything's basketball games, it's the highest use. I'm going to turn on, and the electricity from the battery is going to still supply the electricity at the school and not ask the grid to supply that electricity. So that demand charge is affected. We can affect that demand charge and try to drive that price down. So those are the multiple things that a battery can do here at the school. And we've been implementing batteries at a lot of high schools and elementary schools across the state. We just just finishing up doing 2 batteries in Sharon. We just finished up the high school in Fairhaven. We're doing batteries at Harvard, Framingham State, Bridgewater State, going across the state doing lots of batteries. If you look at the lower canopy section where the administration parking is, there's a little grassy area to the right. Well, the transformer from the utility that supports this building is directly across that driveway behind the school building. So we'd like to put the battery right there next to that canopy and then be able to connect it right to the transformer so that it has the most impact to the school. In addition, in order to implement this, we have to totally upgrade the services to the school so that it can receive that. So right now, I have no idea how old the school is and the infrastructure, electrical infrastructure to support that. But as part of this project, we're going to actually upgrade and bring that all up to code on nickel to be able to support the canopy installation. Are there any questions so far?
Put in a new phone system too while you're a new phone system while you're at it? You work on that?
I have a question on the project
Telephones.
design.
Why do we need telephones in?
On the design.
Yes.
You're suggesting that the blue area to the left here, the other part of the parking lot.
Yeah,
that
I'm
we-
gonna,
that
I
we
think we're
remove
gonna
that?
eliminate that one. It's
That
close.
part is so used though, it seems like, is it only because of the transformer connection? I mean, it seems like.
It's the farthest run, it's the most expensive part to install, plus the grade on the slope on that area is rather difficult for us to manage because the stanchions we're keeping, it would look like, it would be awkward looking because it'd be running uphill at the same time. Plus the visibility from the road, I didn't
Okay.
think that was, if I could get it, I usually try to get it as far back from the road as I possibly can, makes sense. But the large parking area was the primary. One of the drivers for that was the superintendent wanted to have a walkway between the schools that was
Right,
covered.
right.
So that whole area is covered, but I said, instead of doing separate canopies, let's just do one big canopy, so it's under the drive area and under the parking area. And then next to it is the open classroom that goes right on top of the, be the same canopy, but it'd be over on the grass. And you can use that as an outdoor classroom.
Yep.
I have a question. On the upgrade, the systems of the schools, I don't know, to be compatible with this, is that a cost that's built into kind of that lease?
We can't implement it without the upgrades, so it's cost we carry.
Okay.
So we work with the utility company, we bring in and upgrade that transformer.
So that's on you, that's not like the water management systems, for example?
Has not, it's all on me, it's all part of our installation cost.
Do you have any pictures of the transformers or the battery that we're talking about?
Not in this slide deck, but I can bring those to you.
Because they're large, right?
I'm sorry?
How big are they?
So this battery is not as big as you think. I want to say it's the size of one of these bookcases long and about twice the size width. So it's like this, but twice as wide. And it goes on the ground on a concrete pad, and then we put a fence around it.
So it'd be like off to the side, it'd be aesthetically pleasing somehow, it wouldn't just be in the middle of somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
we'll paint it.
Pretty.
So right now the request is to paint on the steel, the school colors. So I'm gonna try my best to get a magic wand right now, try to make the best solution
Tough
I
color
can,
math,
see where the
she doesn't
numbers
care.
come in, and then we can start taking care of that.
Maybe not really.
But right now, they come in a white cabinet. They look like a generator. You need the outdoor generator, you see the gas-fired generator, commercial generators on the outside.
Would there be 2 of them, one for each school, or just one?
No, actually, I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
Originally, I wanted to do a system that went to the elementary school and a system that went to the middle school. That would have been, to me, the most cost-effective way of doing this. But my job is kind of like a puzzle. I have federal rules, I have state rules, I have utility rules, and I have municipal rules. Well, the utility rule says that I can, on one parcel, I can only do one system. Both schools, even though they have 2 addresses and 2 utility systems and 2 bills, they're on one town parcel. So the utility rules will only let me do one system. So the way we're designing this is we're actually oversizing the system to produce all the electricity for the middle school and produce bill credits from overproduction. It's called net metering. So they actually come and swap out the meter. It runs in 2 directions. When you're asking for electricity from the grid, it goes forward. When you're making more electricity than you need, it spins the meter backwards. And then by law, they're required to give you the bill a credit. And that's equal to the supply and demand charge. So we build up those credits, and this system is designed to build enough credits to send to the elementary school bill to zero out that bill. So our goal right now is to have a utility bill that says is close to zero as it possibly can at the middle school, and another bill at the elementary school that's close to zero as it possibly can, and then Select would invoice for the kilowatts that are produced from the system. That makes sense? Yeah, I tried. We actually went all the way up to Senior Vice President at the utility company to ask him to give us a waiver, and the answer was no.
Well, I think he's got a couple more slides, right?
So this is actually the financials that at this moment in time, I still have a little bit more work to do. And I do not have any revenues associated with the batteries right now, but if I didn't have a battery, we just implemented this solution right now. From the day we turn it on, it's pretty hard to see right now, but it looks right now over 25 years, it says volumetric electric rate. That's pretty much the electric rate on the utility bills that Patrick provided me, which are the current bills. 14, let's call it 15 cents. The power purchase rate right now would start at 14.6, which is a little bit lower, but that number would be fixed for the next 25 years. There'd be no increase on that. So we know, Patrick would know exactly what the bills are going to be moving forward for the next 25 years for the school system. Kind of helps them manage, to reduce the cost. But right now we're looking at saving the school system over the life of the contract close to $1.1 million. There's another component that a lot of municipal organizations don't realize that they have to comply with. A short while ago, our last governor signed an executive order saying that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in our public buildings by 33% on 2025 and another 50% by 2050. So by implementing solar at the school, even though we own the system, the greenhouse gas reduction, they apply to the school and you get to leverage that greenhouse gas emissions. So when Patrick has to fill out that form that he's going to see probably in about 4 months, where he has to demonstrate how the school is reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, he can leverage the implementation of the solar to help be in compliance.
That's something we fill out on a regular basis anyway, Patrick? Oh,
This is the governor just signed
Oh,
it
this
before
is
he
new.
left office, 3 or 4 months before he left office. And our new governor was very much in favor of it, and she's going to make sure that folks adhere to it. It originally started out for all state buildings, but it's rolled down into public buildings. As you can see, just electric power, we need to reduce just our electric consumption by 53% across the state. And these are the steps that we're moving forward with how we go through this. Usually I start with the superintendent's office and the business manager and the facilities director, and we kind of outline what it would look like and see if it's a possible fit. Then we come to the school board and ask for a vote of support. Then, because the contract has two parts, there's the part associated with the kilowatt production, but we also need, because it's our asset, we also need permission from the town to be able to own and operate that asset here at the school property. So that's a process that we go through with the town manager and the select board, and they have to put a warrant on the annual town meeting, and the warrant pretty much is asking the town to give the town manager permission to enter into and negotiate an agreement with Select for this asset. And then once that's done, we start implementing the project. But in the short term, once we have this vote and the select folks vote to move forward with it, under the Power Options program in the state of Massachusetts, we can sign a letter of intent. It's non-binding, just says that both parties agree to start moving forward and doing the due diligence to get to a contract. But that allows us to start the application process, which is the longest lead item. Applications to the utility companies and applications to the state to lock in those incentives. So once those incentives are locked in, we know that the price per kilowatt is going to be pretty much fixed, and we can move forward through the process along those lines. Once we get to town meeting and they vote for the town manager, along the way we've sent them the contracts. He being a lawyer, as well as having outside, and you also have your own lawyer. Those contracts will all be vetted by the lawyers so that they're ready when we get to town meeting. A short time after that, they get signed, and then we try to implement it.
So if we are unable to come to contract terms down the road, there's no cost, no obligation to the school district?
There's no cost associated. The only cost at the end of the day would be any cost associated with you hiring third-party legal to review contracts, but everything else is on our nickel. Again, we own the app. We don't develop these assets like the solar farms that you see. We don't develop them and then sell them to a Wall Street firm. We actually own these assets ourselves, and we maintain them and service them with our own employees. So, and if Mr. Willett sees anything out of the ordinary, he just makes a phone call to us, and we dispatch out of Hopkinton, somebody's here. We also, this whole thing is connected to the internet. We actually have a network operating center where we have people actually physically watching 700 different assets to make sure that they're actually working properly. Because if it's not making any kilowatts, we don't get paid. So we want to make sure that these are as efficient as possible.
Thank you.
So with you saying that our internet is super spotty outside.
We have our own.
Okay.
We have it's connected to satellite. Because if the system goes down, the internet goes down, we can't see the system. So all the equipment uses satellite.
When should we see potential pictures of what this should look like across our walkway or any of those other things?
That's a great question. The last time, when I did it for Sharon, it took about a week and a half for them to turn around. They use, you know how you can use Google Earth and do a Street View? So they use that, and then they superimpose what the canopy would look like on those areas. So the best we can do is whatever Google Earth has for those street shots. So most likely the views are all going to probably be from the street, unless one of the cars that's driven down takes some photographs inside the parking lot. But that's probably what we'll get is street, what it looks like from the street at eye level. That makes sense?
And if we don't like it, we can just get out of the negotiation.
If you don't like it, we don't do the project, right?
So there's a few processes that have to go forward. What we're voting on tonight is really to approve the letter of intent.
No, actually, all we're asking you to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just a vote of support.
Yes. Yes.
And then that letter of support would go to the town manager and to the select board. So they're not going to move forward on anything unless you folks agree to support the project.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
So what we'll be looking for tonight is a letter of, or a vote of support to move forward in the process. And we'll hand it over to the select board from there. So I could request a motion, please, to support the process moving forward.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Next, in your packet, you have the personnel report. And you see that we have 2 new staff members since last month and 1 resignation. Just to note, one of the new staff members didn't pan out, so that'll be reflected next month. So it's actually in reality 1 new staff member and 1 resignation. Any questions on that?
Dr. Bailey, are we still doing, what do we call those, the exit interviews?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any information or data from those, like any trends that we should be aware of or anything like that?
Usually it's money, more money, or in one case, they are moving up. They're, bettering themselves, they're building their capacity, and for example, it could be a para becoming a teacher, and if there's no positions in our school, they might go to another school, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Okay. Next, as you know, we like to highlight curriculum at our meetings, and first we'd like to highlight Ford Middle School art with Mrs. Daniels. So I'd love to call Mrs. Daniels up to the podium.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hello, Mrs. Daniels, welcome.
Thank you. I'm here today to talk about our partnership with the Acushnet Cultural Council, which has been so positive for us over the years. So, hopefully this will work. There we go. Okay, so these relationships with different organizations that support the arts are so important. First, having these supports our district's strategic plan to prioritize community partnerships that support our goals for academic excellence and social emotional learning. And of course, through these, we can provide opportunities for our students that we wouldn't have without them. And it does supplement the art budget and is really helpful to provide some extra things we wouldn't have without these funds. So the Acushnet Cultural Council is one of our appointed boards in town, for those of you who aren't familiar with the council. And the council chooses the local cultural council grants that are funded by the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And they have really been very supportive of our schools. They don't have to continually fund us, but they always find a way to support our projects that we have been doing. And it's been different people over the years who are on the council. So it shows that not only do we have the Cultural Council support in general, but also the resident support that arts are important in our schools. So since about the year 2000, they've supported these types of things for our students. So again, supplies for the art program and the art club, field trips, visiting artists and workshops for our students, the art club anthology, which was a printed book we were doing for some time with the kids, and all the children got a copy of their beautiful work, and all kinds of special exhibits and events we've had over the years. And I have some photos to share with you of those. So this is our art club this year. Everybody gets sketchbooks for if they're a member of the art club, and that's a costly item that the kids really love to have. It encourages them to draw at home. We're able to get those to them through these grant monies, as well as all of the other projects we do in art club get supplemented with this money. We've had field trips, such as to the Kilburn Mill to see the Whaling mural some time ago. We've been to the Museum of Fine Arts. We've been to the Rhode Island School of Design Museum, and Art on Center. We have visiting artists provide workshops for us. When we can't go out, we bring them in, and it's a great chance for students to meet professionals in the field and have a different experience with art in school. And again, special events. This, what you're looking at here was at Art on Center in Fairhaven, an art gallery where the kids were able to display their work and learn about what it's like to do a professional show. And speaking of shows, I just wanted to take a moment to plug our art show that will be coming up in March. March is Youth Art Month, and we will be having a display right here in the library of select student work, and a reception on Thursday, March 16th, which you are all invited to, from 3 to 3:45, right here, where our students and their families who are featured in the show are going to be invited, and it will be up through April 14th. So people will have a chance, hopefully, to see it, and it should be up during at least one of your meetings here that we have. So again, we have another partner who helps us with this, the Acushnet PTO. They pay for our refreshments at this wonderful event. So we hope to see you all there if you're able to be there. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I didn't realize we actually got funding from the Acushnet Cultural Council. That's really great.
Thank you. Yes, it's I've written the grants over the years, and actually right now the chairperson is Linda Gilbo, who is one of our retired teachers, and which I'm excited about to be able to work with her. And they've been really great because over the years, you know, as things change, we actually have to apply for the grant by about mid-October, but it's for the following January through December. So sometimes it's a little difficult to totally predict what we'd need. And they've been excellent working with us when things have changed, when things have come up that I might like to do with the students and use the money for instead of what we originally thought, or if something doesn't work out. They've been really great helping us find a way to make everything work and still be able to use the grant money in the best way for the students. That's great. Thanks.
I want to thank you for being here tonight, Ms. Daniels, and I do want to say that in talking about the aesthetics of the campus, one of the projects this year that I had asked Mrs. Daniels to work on with her students is we have a fire hydrant in the back, and we've connected with the fire department, and her students in the art club are going to be designing some type of painting on the hydrant. I'm sure the creativity will be great, and it will make our campus look beautiful. So that's another project that they're going to work on this year. So
Yes, we have a couple of mock-ups ready to go,
Yeah.
and looking at a little more springtime weather to get
Absolutely.
that
But I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all
Murals
you do.
on the outdoor space.
Oh,
during
and the outdoor classroom, that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Next up, we have our academic coach, Mrs. Christine Demers, and Tim Frechette, who is a grade 7-8 math teacher. I'd like to call them up to the podium. They are going to discuss math.
Excellent.
Hello, thank you for having us. As Dr. Bailey said, my name is Christine Demers. I'm the academic coach here at Ford Middle School. Madam Chair, members of the school committee, we're here tonight to talk a little bit about a recent visit that our grade 7 and 8 math team had with the Fairhaven math team, or math group. So first, I wanted to just show a little picture of our team, and this is who went. So you'll see in the picture our 8th grade math teacher, Cara Duvall, our 7th grade math teacher, Katie Rogier, and then Tim, who will be speaking shortly. He is our grade 7 and 8 math teacher. What I first like to do here is kind of highlight a little bit about the kind of overview of our meeting and how it aligns to the district plan. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, that first pillar, the achieving academic excellence. Through this meeting, we were able to establish, just this, in lines with the consistent model of instruction. We talked about curriculum, assessments, different resources. We also talked about data-driven instruction through the discussions of assessments. And then we also talked about just continuing the opportunities, the grade level and vertical teams, and the opportunities for future opportunities to meet with them. So what I'd like to do now is hand the podium over to Tim Frechette, who's going to talk a little bit more in detail about some of our meetings.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Bailey, members of the school committee. So in terms of our visit to Fairhaven, our primary goal was just to make sure that our middle school is setting up our students for success when they enter high school, and that communication really helps with this partnership. And so, for example, one of our points of discussion was our student placement, primarily with our algebra students. Are they being placed in classes based on our teacher recommendations? We found that Fairhaven High was honoring our teacher recommendations for that. So based on that, we're confident that based on the accelerated pathway that we're doing as part of the Common Core, combined with Fairhaven approving our teacher recommendations, we're confident that our algebra students are taking part, or not taking part, but more so being placed in the right spot so that they are being set up for success. And then just again, homework assessments, note taking, these are just other areas that we explored to make sure that we're matching our expectations with what students should expect in high school.
So next, just kind of piggybacking on what Tim is talking about, creating those environments for student success. So here we've included a picture of something that we're actually doing here at FMS as well. And if you were to walk down our 7th and 8th grade corridor right now, you would see lots of lockers decorated with some different inspirational messages for our students. They actually highlight all different areas of student success. And most of our lockers are decorated. So it's just kind of an additional piece where Tim's talking about, making sure that we're setting the students up for success. This was just one other area that we wanted to highlight.
Then just building off of what we had talked about. So there are a multitude of things that we discussed regarding class expectations. Again, we're just trying to build a consistent model of student accountability that starts at 7th grade, goes to 8th grade, and then just continues to build beyond middle school, but in more of a incremental way as opposed to just a sudden jump into high school.
Okay, and then lastly, looking at that third pillar where we are talking about strengthening partnerships with parents in the larger community, just the opportunity to have these meetings was a wonderful, chance to get to speak to our partners and our teammates at Fairhaven. We spoke with teachers at multiple grade levels. We were able to really collaborate on several topics. It was really a great beneficial meeting for us. We look forward to continuing that, and we've already discussed with them future opportunities for us to meet. So we, again, look forward to doing that coming future.
Thank you very much.
Yes, just in closing, very positive experience for all of us. If we continue this, it'll be a strong partnership with our community.
Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish Mrs. Gomes was here because I know in the past, I know she had to step out, but I know that's been a concern for her especially. And we just want to make sure that our students, no matter what high school they go to, that they're ready and that they're taking the correct math courses here at Ford Middle School. So, and it's tough when you're a middle school teacher and you're a single teacher and you don't have that partner. It's been really nice that Fairhaven has opened their doors for that collaboration. And our team embraces that. So I know that there'll be more meetings in our future, and I appreciate the work that you're all doing. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for the math team tonight?
One question. Will you be working with the other high schools that we feed into?
Yeah.
And with the same type of direction?
We don't have anything set up as of right now, but we have reached out to the schools, like Michelle's saying yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question, just a comment. I think it's really great. I mean, I think we have been concerned that there isn't that regular communication and coordination with the high schools that our students are moving on to. So I think this is a great practice to be putting in place, and just really glad to see that,
It's
they're
happening.
also amenable to the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time tonight. Okay, next, I would like to call up our technology director, Mr. Missler. He has a very quick technology update.
I didn't do it. Good evening, everyone. Just a quick update. We rolled out a system called PaperCut. What that system is essentially it's a print management solution that gets to utilize our badges in the district. So instead of having everyone print to whatever printer that they need to or figure out from a multitude of devices that we have, they literally can go up to a printer, swipe their badge, and out comes that print job. Some benefits to that system are the following. You guys have already probably handled this or seen this in the past where someone's printing out something while you're trying to collect or you're trying to scan, it just kind of interrupts you. This system stops that. And if you're printing something that's a secure document like an IEP, et cetera, you don't have to worry about it just being out in the open for public consumption. You can just go up and simply get your print job by swiping your badge. The other benefit we have is, say a printer is down for whatever reason. Say it's jammed, say there's printer toner that's gone. You literally can just walk to another printer, swipe your badge, and out that print job comes. We put that in place for a few things, for efficiency. It also cuts down on print jobs. Sometimes people will put a print job in, forget about it, and then come back and say, oh, I don't need that print job, and just simply cancel it. So that's the reason why we put that system in place. We have a security update. From the security audit that we had originally, some of the things that were talked about were some vulnerabilities that we had in the district. Some of those have to do with our old operating systems and old computers that we have here. So as we've gone through in a previous update I gave you guys, which was we were consolidating essentially 15 or whatever virtual machines, virtual servers. We've got them down to about 6. We're down to about 4 now. And that's removed some of the older systems that no longer considered, or that are considered end of life from Microsoft. So all of you probably remember Windows XP, 98, if you go back that far. Those systems had an end of life and they don't receive Windows updates. What that means is you're vulnerable to attacks, ransomware, everything like that. Unfortunately, in this district, we had some older devices. So our goal when we came in is to simply remove some of those older systems as fast as possible through the migration or whatever we can do, consolidation, and get the old systems out of place. And we've been doing that, and we just actually rolled out one of our bigger ones, which is our file server that housed all the files in the district. And if you think of a bad system to have a vulnerability on, it would be that system. We no longer have that problem. So that's now taken care of. We rolled out a new wireless microphone system in the AES CAF. That was part of that ESEA grant. It was literally put in place 2 days before that and went off without a hitch. So we're happy about that. It sounded great. And after that, it's kind of business as usual. We've been rolling out how-tos for staff and kind of doing the how-tos to help make our lives a little bit more efficient and putting procedures in place to make teachers and staff lives easier as well. And really that's it. So if anybody has any questions, please hit me.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Okay, next is a quick one. It's the Reed's Collaborative Agreement Amendment, and that's included in your packet. I do need a vote on this just to accept it. And then I would need the chairperson to sign the agreement. Yeah.
I don't know if everybody had a chance to review this before the meeting, if you want a second now to take a look, but I didn't see any issues. Do we need a minute before we take a vote? No?
Okay.
Yeah. So if I request a motion, please, to approve the Reed's Collaborative Agreement Amendment.
So,
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 No. And Mrs. Gomes is
And
absent.
Mrs. Gomes is,
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the superintendent's recommended budget presentation. I would like to call Mr. McIntyre to the podium as he will be presenting with me.
okay. Okay.
right. Good evening, Chairperson Downing, School Committee,
Good evening.
Superintendent Bailey. Thank you as always. I'm just going to test this out to make sure I'm working here. All right, we're good. We're good to go. So I just want to inform you tonight that this is a presentation that is just informational. There is no vote of approval. It is more so to catch you up to date with where we're at with the budget. I will allude further to this in the presentation about our timeline, receiving feedback from the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator, public, so on and so forth. I ask that you hold your questions to the end unless it's crucial. But everything's on the table, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Superintendent Bailey.
Thank you. So this slide will look very familiar to you. If you recall, when I came into the district 5 years ago, I conducted listening tours with all the stakeholders, came up with an entry plan. We then developed a mission, a vision, and a district strategy. So this just highlights those things here, and to say that there's been a through line since year one until now. It's a working document. We've made tweaks along the way, but we've pretty much stuck to what we set out and aimed according to the stakeholders and the needs of the students, etc. So our mission, just to review again, the mission of our Acushnet Public Schools in partnership with staff, parents, and the community is to promote student success, growth, and learning in a safe and supportive environment. Our vision is to be a high-performing school district where all students, are afforded the opportunities to realize their potential. And our strategic objectives, there's 3 of them. Achieving academic excellence for all students is number 1. Number 2 is creating thriving social and emotional learning experiences for all students. And the 3rd one is strengthening partnerships with parents and the larger community. And you will see in all of the curriculum presentations that we've had this year, everything is aligned to these strategies. And you'll also see tonight that with our budget needs, et cetera, everything is aligned to our district strategy. Okay? So I think this next part is really important for the committee, but more so for the public, so that people understand that running a school district is very different than running a typical business. We have a lot of fixed costs, a lot of mandated costs. So I'd like to really run through those and highlight those so that people really understand a lot of things are not our choice or in our control. Okay? So starting with salaries and wages, our employees, the majority of them are union employees. We have to follow a contract, a bargaining agreement with them, and so their salaries are fixed. We have to follow that each year. And those non-union employees have contracts that range anywhere from 1 to 6 years, and again, those are contracts that we follow for salaries. Technology, as you know, we are a 1-to-1 district, which means that we have a ratio of 1 device per student in our district, but that's also fixed costs of keeping up with the infrastructure to make sure that the technology and the environment is maintained. Curriculum, that is the meat and potatoes of what we do. As you know, we had an audit a few years back, and it's really our central guide. One of the things that came out in my learning walks, as you know, is all the stakeholder groups said there was no alignment. So by having a curriculum, and as you know, we have highly rated, green rated curriculum, everything is aligned, okay? And that central guide is for teachers, and we know we've already seen success over the past few years. One example would be the ESEA National Distinguished School Award, that the elementary school was recognized. So we've already seen results of the hard work that we've done. Another area is special education. And this really it's required by law. The price of anything with special education is out of our control. And think of it like this: the cost to educate a general ed student, it's doubled for special education typically. So we have those costs. And with special education, if we don't maintain the level of services that we had the previous year, we basically jeopardize our federal funding and the grants that we receive, which, for example, is approximately $360,000. Next, we have operations and maintenance. As you know, we are a large campus, 54 acres. We've got 2 aging buildings that we want to keep up on. And, you know, we have things that need to be replaced. And again, those come with fixed costs to maintain. And just like we had an IT, a security audit, and a curriculum audit, our hope this coming year is to have a facilities audit so we can really see what the needs are moving forward with our facilities, because we want to make sure that we're keeping up with both buildings as well as the recreational fields. Then we have transportation. And as you know, transportation is legally mandated. Busing needs to be provided within, if a child lives 2 miles or more, but our school committee policy basically allows for students within a mile to get the bus, which is fine. And again, having that transportation strengthens our partnerships with the community, and I'm sure it's a huge help for planning with families, etc. Okay, high school tuition. As you know, the rates are set by the state in conjunction with our contracts. And then enrollment for high school is always variable, so we have no control over how many students attend each year.
Thank you, Paula. And from there, you know, we aren't typical like other businesses, but we are in a sense as well. And that sense is that we still deal with pricing and market volatility. We still deal with inflation. You know, we're shopping with the same vendors as everyone else. You know, we have the opportunity to buy things in bulk, multi-year contracts that have some cost savings, but generally speaking, you know, we're out there with everyone else purchasing services at market rate. Our budget does rely on 2 sources of funding. That's our foundation budget and our local contribution. And again, those are affected by elements out of our control. You know, foundation budgets directed by the state and formulas that they have written and how well the economy is doing from their perspective. And then local contribution, you know, depends on what sort of sources the town has for money, property value, income, what businesses are coming and going, population rates, so on and so forth. So we'll continue from there. So essentially how this process started, you know, we started with building a baseline budget. So the first steps in building a baseline budget is to find a fixed point of reference, which in this case was FY 2023's budget, so that we can use for comparison purposes. So, you know, we take what we started with take what we ended with, the final FY 23 budget, and we start from there to make sure that we can provide the same services moving forward. So the 3 steps are outlined right on top, right on the side of the screen. So we're going to begin with the current year budget. We're going to adjust the budget based on actual spending in the current year, so that could mean increases or decreases. You know, prices came in higher or lower, we needed less or more of certain things. And then we project new expenditures. You know, again, costs of items are going up. That's out of our control, but we still need paper for the classrooms. We still need contracted services for special education, things like that. And then on the same hand, you know, there's items that maybe we used and weren't as much as a success as we thought, and we consider cutting those out moving forward to have some cost savings. And then step 3, you know, we're going to analyze the baseline budget, where we're at, and then adjust it for identified growth needs and continued improvements. And I'm going to share more of that onto the next slide. So this is difficult to read. I apologize. There's a lot of information on this. But at the end of the day, we began with our FY23 final budget, which was $15,669,570,000. From there, we analyzed each major classification area based on DESI's chart of accounts. So salaries, administration, instruction, pupil services, operations and maintenance, community services, and programs with other school districts. So as we spoke to earlier in the presentation, you know, based on salaries and their fixed costs because of the contractual obligations we have, we're looking at an increase of $159,000 between FY23 to FY24. And, this accumulates as we move down and gives the percentage increase of the overall budget. We continue on down. There's an increase to administration costs of $87,000. That number is a little misleading to a sense that this year during the budget process, there was a lot of reclassification. There's items in this administration bucket that were not properly classified in prior years in the budget. For instance, technology infrastructure should have been in administration. It was being included in instruction. So there is a peak to this number that might not necessarily be a true representation of what the actual increase is. And then same thing, in instruction, there's a decrease because we moved some out of this bucket and into the administration bucket. So you're going to see that throughout the presentation, but I just want to give you some insight that we are now better aligned with the DESI chart of accounts, which better aligns the data that we report out, and it's included in all sorts of formulas for net school spending, reimbursements, things like that. So moving on, instruction, again, there was a decrease. This is in part due to reclassifications, but this is also due to the timeline of purchasing curriculum. Curriculum, generally purchased on a 3 to 5 year contract for some significant cost savings, which we did a handful of years ago. In FY24, we don't expect any major curriculums to come due, and we do anticipate the contracts expiring in FY25, so we are anticipating a large uptick in 2025. Continuing down the line, pupil services, this line is specific to transportation and nursing costs, things like that for our pupils, as what it says, pupil services. So this increase is about $386,000, and again, transportation's a contractual increase. There's out-of-district tuitions that we have in there that we haven't had in the past that we are mandated to pay for and service, and that's really the meat and potatoes of that line. Operations and maintenance, there's an increase of $236,000, and again, our buildings are old, they're out of date, they're inefficient. There's heating and oil costs that, just this year we're seeing a huge increase to, and we have to budget for that moving forward. Again, fixed costs, we can't turn off the heat in these buildings. We have kids that need to learn and teachers that need to teach. And then utility costs, that we've just better aligned them to what our actual bills are. There's no sense in budgeting, $10,000 a month for utilities when we know it's going to come in at $15,000 a month. So again, fixed costs there. Community services, this is a small increase, and again, this is really related to transportation that we provide to non-public schools, small increase. And the programs with other school districts, this is a decrease of about $530,000, which is related to high school tuition costs. And what that really is we're expecting a decrease in high school students of approximately 22 between FY23 and FY24. So at the end of the day, to build a baseline budget, we got from the FY23 final budget, we incorporated all these factors that are essentially fixed, and we ended up at $15,985,666, which is essentially a 2% increase from FY23.
Without any changes, right?
Without any changes, without any adjustments. So this was,
Yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
So this
last
is level.
Level service.
Yeah, so that was steps 1 and 2 of building a baseline budget. Step 3 is what you'll see next, and that's where we're making adjustments to continue needs for identified growth and things like that.
So as the process went on, our team got together and really asked each other, what do we need? What do we need to continue our success here in Acushnet? What do we need to continue to succeed and grow? We saw a lot of growth in our district over the past several years, and again, the ESEA national distinction is a great example of that. So we needed to ask people what adjustments do we need to do, and I'd like to outline those adjustments now. Okay, so the needs are as follows. Adding a full-time reading interventionist at Ford Middle School. Likewise, adding a full-time math interventionist at the middle school. Adding a full-time district administrative assistant. Adding a full-time school bus to the transportation fleet, bringing our bus numbers from 10 to 11. Adding middle school sports program. and adding technology for a new school-wide phone system. So this slide is really important because typically, a typical level service increase, you typically would see 3 to 4%. We were able to keep ours to a little over 2% with our baseline budget. Now our adjustments that I just talked about, that's an additional 2.17% increase. So again, very reasonable because again, we want to continue our success in Acushnet. Okay. So just to really dive into these adjustments a bit so everyone can understand, and this is not just work that Patrick did and I did, this was the budget subcommittee, this is stemming from conversations with teachers, with principals, but as you know, we have a team of interventionists at the elementary school. We have seen success with that. There are no interventionists at the middle school level. And what happens is when a student is unable to understand the content in the regular classroom and needs additional assistance, that's where the interventionist would come in. And currently we're implementing a multi-tiered system of support program using data to identify and address students with reading foundation skills that need improvement. And if you recall, a couple of months ago, we had the reading specialist from Ford Middle School present, and she really talked about her caseload, and I believe her caseload was around 20 students. And you'll see when I show you the data that there's many children at the middle school level not getting those services because we don't have the human resources. So if you look at the chart, you will see that there's 62%, if our middle schoolers were to take the test today, the MCAS test, 62% would not be meeting or only partially meeting expectations. And to us, that's unacceptable. We need to, the goal is obviously to move that needle of the 62% to 100%. But the interventionist would focus on all of those needs. Okay, and the math is similar. If you look at the chart, we have 53% of students currently not meeting or partially meeting expectations. Unacceptable. We want 100% of our students. So we don't have the human resources in place to address this concern. We believe by having a reading and a math interventionist, we can start to address those skills that the students so desperately need help in. And again, you did see some of this presentation a couple months back with the reading specialist.
So on to our next adjustment. I continue to ask, which we spoke to with subcommittee this year and was preliminary approved, was the addition of a district administrative assistant. We did not follow through with that position for fiscal 23 in hopes to get it into our local budget, but at the end of the day, most districts, our business office consists of a business manager and essentially a clerk that's accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, secretary, and partially HR. Most districts have separate positions for all of those tasks, whether it's segregation of duties, cross-training, whatever it may be. We're asking for an administrative assistant to not only support the accounting clerk, myself, but the director of technology, curriculum, facilities, and school nutrition, all of which have no clerical support at this time. And what this person would do, it would alleviate all of these administrators from the minutia, the day-to-day minutia, so that they can focus on these high-level needs, high-focused tasks, so that we can, work on what we were hired to work on and move the district in the right direction and, become more efficient in what we do.
If I could just interject, I cannot stress enough that currently we don't have the resources in place to do any cross-training. And I think I've mentioned this in previous meetings, that having one person do all of the payroll, all of the accounts payable is a very dangerous thing, because if something should happen, there is not one person in this district who could slide into that job. So again, it would be a non-union position because of all the confidentiality that exists with this position. But this is a serious issue where we don't have anyone else to do that work, cross-training. not to mention all the tasks that Mr. McIntyre just outlined.
So moving forward, to another ask is adding a bus to the school transportation fleet. Again, we discussed our transportation policy and policy subcommittee meetings. We talked about, eliminating the bus for certain students or extending, the boundaries to which we provide transportation, maybe from the 1 mile to the 2 mile. And at the end of the day, what we landed on was adding a bus to the fleet. With this bus being added to the fleet, not only will it help our overcrowded buses that we currently deal with, we are seeing upticks in behavioral issues on the bus because of them being so crowded, but it also makes sure that our students are getting picked up and dropped off to school timely and safely. At the beginning of the school year, we did have a bus that was dropping students off late. We've since helped to remedy that situation, but with changing routes and additional students in future years, we can't promise that with the bus fleet we continue to have. And just to put it into perspective, if a bus is late 10 minutes every day and that impacts our classroom time, that ends up amounting to 30 hours over the 80-day school calendar period. So it does have a significant
30
impact.
hours of learning loss.
Yeah. So we are advocating for a bus, again, to solve all of those issues. And in addition, I just did want to disclose that we are working closely with Massachusetts Safe Routes to School. I have a webinar with them, or excuse me, a Zoom meeting with them next week, just to see how we can even, make this situation better all around, increase walkers, bicyclists, road conditions around the school, signage, things like that. So, it's not just we need a bus and that's the end solution. We're turning over every stone and looking at how we can make this better through every avenue that we have the opportunity to.
Something that is not in our local budget, but we were able to find the money this year, was to have a middle school sports program. We would like to get that back into our local budget. This is something that is extremely important to our students, especially at this age group. You'll see that it relates to all 3 pillars in our district strategy. And I would just like to shout out to the Lady Wildcats who just won the championship basketball game. But I'll tell you, I've watched the boys' game, the girls' games, the cheerleaders, but the lessons learned and how to interact socially with each other, this is something that at middle school they look forward to. It's something that makes kids want to be in school. This is something I feel extremely strongly about, and I know that our team does as well, to keep this going, because again, we get to interact with all the other middle schools. We take a bus over, they come here, we have referees, and it's real life, and they get to experience diversity and other things that they're not just in their bubble in Acushnet, okay? So that is something that we'd like to continue back in the local budget. And again, that program did stop during COVID, and it's back up and running, and you can see there's a ton of things: cheerleading, basketball, volleyball, soccer, flag football. So there's lots of opportunities for kids to participate.
And then finally, our last ask is a technology ask for a new school-wide phone system. So at the end of the day, again, in conjunction with the audit that we had and our new tech director's input, the system that we have in place is inadequate. It even goes as far as that it doesn't meet certain mandated requirements in relation to emergency and 911 standards, the Ray-Bonds Act to be specific. And what we're looking to do is change over the system to an IP phone system, which will consolidate the existing 3 vendors that we work with now to pay our phone bill to one, which is cost effective in the first place, and then it supports any mandated changes. It allows for flexibility. It increases accessibility, stability, and it should essentially last us 20 years. And over 20 years, an $80,000 ask is only $4,000 a year. But it's something that in the past we've tried to piece together and we've failed to do. So the idea is, you should do it all at once, implement the entire system right, and then you don't have to think about it for 20 years. So that was our last ask. So now on the other side of the budget, revenue sources. What are our revenue sources? So I alluded to them, briefly at the beginning of the presentation, but in essence, it's state and local funds. And state funds come in the version of Chapter 70 aid. And the state actually mandates what is required to be contributed by the town of Acushnet. These two numbers, Chapter 70 plus required district contribution, equal our required net school spending. It's a dollar figure that we need to meet in expenses every single year. Or again, we're incompliant and, we have to face consequences of losing funding and not being eligible for alternative funding. So just to show a comparison between the years, in FY24's numbers are estimated. Typically they'd be available by now, but because of the change in government, they're going to be released late. But DESE advised us to complete a formula spreadsheet to receive our estimated numbers. And right now, as you can see, without focusing on the numbers, the percentage share in FY23 was 41% Chapter 78, 53% required district contribution, and then 6% in additional contribution that the town of Acushnet provided. Well, in FY24, we're looking at almost exactly the same numbers. Looking at 40% of Chapter 78, 54% of required district contribution, which gets us to a 94% funding of our $60 million budget that we're asking for. And then again, 6% more that we're asking for an additional contribution. And just to put this into perspective when compared to other districts, according to data that DESE released for FY 2020, we actually ranked 249 out of 319 districts statewide in actual net school spending as a percentage of what's required. So essentially, we spent 111% of what was required. So 11% more than what is, again, required. This ranks in the bottom 5th statewide. So we're not asking for a lot. We're asking to be consistent with prior year, which, at the end of the day, still ranks in the lower section of districts statewide. In addition, we do exhaust all options to receive alternative funding. There's grants, federal and state. There's circuit breaker funds that were allotted. There's stabilization funds that we can tap into that we contribute to from local sources over the years. And then there's capital appropriation from the town, and then miscellaneous special revenue. So just to give an idea, we have large ESSER grants that are coming to expiration, but those are a large source of alternative funding right now. Our preschool is essentially self-funded based on those rates. I think our only ask in local is 1 FTE. And then our school lunch program is another example of a fully funded program that we do not ask for any additional funds for. And then in addition, ESSER is funding our ESSER and academies, acceleration academies are funded by, sorry, one more time. ESSER funding and accelerated academy grant funding actually are the only funding sources for our after-school, school vacation, and summer programming at this time. So if any of those funds dry up, again, we anticipate that these would need to come to local, or we would be talking about charging user fees to the students that participate. So moving on, this is just, again, another way to depict the funds that we've discussed in the past. I know it's difficult to see again, but here's our $16 million in revenue and how we would expect it to be received, required by state and local, and then the additional. And then what this is a breakout of, again, each major category defined by DESE. So, personnel expenses is about $10 million. Administration expenses is $200,000. Instructional expenses is $783,000. Pupil services, $1.2 million. Operations and maintenance, $700,000. Community services, $50,000. And then our technology ask of fixed assets is $80,000. And then finally, the bottom line is programs with other school districts, $3.4 million. And if you look on the version in front of you, you can see the definitions of each of those lines and what may fall in those buckets. But that, in summary, is our budget. And again, there are some increases and decreases that you might see in the change columns that jump out to you. Part of them are due to the classification issue that I spoke to at the beginning of the presentation. Some things were in different buckets in the past that have been since corrected and put in the proper buckets. Again, another way to look at our budget, based on DESE object codes. So the first line is no object codes. which essentially consists of high school tuitions, and that's 21% of our budget. The next three lines are salaries, which is 60% of our budget. If you take out high school tuition, because there's no FTEs associated with that, so that sort of skews our budget, that is 76%, that increases our salaries number to 76% of our budget, which is pretty much the going ratio across school districts. Continuing on, the third largest bucket in our budget is contracted services. Again, fixed cost, we're either contractually obligated or mandated by law to provide these services. And then at the end, there's our supplies and materials costs for our teachers and classrooms, and our other expenses.
Okay, this is another view of where our funds are allocated. Just another way to look at it. 77% of the budget are the schools, AES, FMS, and the high school. Add 15% is special education. That's a total of 92%, which is going directly back into the classrooms. The district is about 8%, but that includes technology, the technology infrastructure that we so desperately need, as you know from the audit, computers, cables, copiers, etc. So building this recommended was a very transparent, all-inclusive process, and I want to say thank you to Mrs. Gomes and Mr. Howcroft. The time and the meetings that we had, we spent a lot of hours together to get it to this point. We went line by line to cut what we could cut. But it's been the work of the entire team in the district, the leaders in the district, the teachers, etc. Everyone's had input. And I will reinforce this, that every single item in our budget can be aligned to the district strategies that we have outlined tonight. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but generally a level service budget will typically go up 3 to 4%. Ours only went up a little over 2%. And then in addition, we asked for a little over 2% for our adjustments. Those are the needs that we talked about. So it's been a true team effort, and I very much appreciated working with everybody on this budget.
So just, looking into the future here. So here we are tonight at our presentation of the recommended budget. Again, no vote of approval, and that's because, we need your reflections, we need your deep thought on this budget, any questions, concerns, and have time to adjust or address our budget accordingly. In addition, we need feedback from the Board of Selectmen, the Town Administrator, and the Finance Committee, which will be coming in the, hopefully the next month or two. And then, we'll open up our meeting for public hearing for the March 7th school committee meeting. From there, we can choose to adopt the operating budget at the March 7th meeting, depending on what the public feedback is, or we have the ability to adopt the operating budget at the April school committee meeting, which still allows us enough time to get the warrant on the spring annual town meeting, advertise the budget, so on and so forth, and hopefully finalize it at that point.
So as this process continues, we'd like to encourage the transparency and the collaboration. Anybody, all the stakeholders have input into this budget, of course. So we continue to encourage that.
And just to keep in mind, we did go line by line through this budget, and we cut out what we could that we thought was reasonable. Again, we looked at what we needed for level services. But each percentage of our budget, each 1% of our budget represents approximately $160,000. And however you want to spin that, that could be the equivalent to 2 teachers' salaries, almost 2.5 school buses, or essentially, the aid that we receive from the state for 30 students. So every budget line in this budget is important to us, and all budget decisions have consequences, and behind every number is a teacher and a student in a classroom.
And I saw this quote that really resonated with me, that last bullet. Just because a need goes unfunded does not mean the need has gone away. So, I take my job and my role very seriously, that my job is to advocate for the needs of the district. And as Mr. McIntyre said, when we went line by line, as we were going line by line, we also said, these are the needs. And sometimes we had to make cuts because we knew these needs were really important to the district to continue our success. So I really would like to thank everyone for your time this evening. And we would like to open it up to any questions you have specifically on this presentation, or you have a packet of exhibits that outline several documents related to the budget.
Well, I'd just like to say that, John and I have had, several meetings about this, and we're not done yet. So, this is a fantastic presentation. However, I do want everybody to know that we are still looking in this and to see, what else we can do, if there's anything else. Because sometimes just looking at numbers for hours and hours on end, sometimes you just can't see the forest through the trees sometimes. So we took a step back for about a week or so, and John and I and Dr. Bailey and Patrick will be meeting again to go over things to see if there's anything else we can do to sort of make this the most cost-effective yet productive budget possible. So this is a great outline, but I don't want to say that John and I are done yet, or Dr. Bailey or Patrick. So just to keep that straight.
I have a question.
Would you
I'll
go
ask
ahead?
one and then someone
Yeah.
else go. I know when we go through this exercise, oftentimes we're very focused on the year in front of us, right? The budget that's in front of us. But I think early in the presentation, there was a credit, 530K roughly, right? I think you said was a timing issue, right? Because curriculum that we may have thought was going to be needed isn't needed till 2025. Have we started engaging the stakeholders about that, knowing that in 2025, I think we're going to see some significant costs relative to curriculum and how we can plan for that?
So I think exactly that. So the 530,000 decrease was actually high school tuitions, but there was a decrease in curriculum costs as well. And we do expect a large increase next year. And this has been the start of the conversations. We wanted to dial in those numbers before we advertised any significant changes. We're looking into curriculum options that are solely funded by a grant. So there's that opportunity. But it's all out on the table right now. Again, it's addressed as a need, and one way or another, we're going to need core curriculum to educate our students, and the conversations start here.
And we had also outlined a curriculum adoption cycle, because we know 4 years ago, we needed curriculum in all the content areas, and we know that it doesn't make sense to continue doing it with all content areas in one particular year. It's too much for the teachers, it's too much for the kids. The professional development, we should just be really striving to do one content, max 2 per year. We are trying to balance that now, but right now you will see some years where the curriculum might be less, because we saved a ton of money by going with a 3 to 5 year plan for curriculum. But then in a year or two, if we decide that we need to, update that curriculum, and curriculum's constantly being updated, it might go up. But again, that price might reflect a multi-year plan.
Yeah, so without getting into the weeds of it, unfortunately, when Acushnet adopted their curriculum, they did it all at once, right? And we've already looked at prices for the future, and essentially what it comes down to is you can buy curriculum annually for, let's say, $75,000. So over 3 years, that's what, $225,000? Or you can enter into a 3-year contract and get it for $100,000. No brainer. But unfortunately, again, because we adopted it all in 1 year, there's gonna be these 3 to 5 year waves that we just have a significant increase in our curriculum budget unless we find a way to stagger it. But the only way to stagger it is entering into those 1 year contracts that unfortunately are going to cost us 75% of what it would cost us if we entered into a 3-year contract. So.
But we entered into those, right, because we had outdated curriculum.
Correct.
We were sort of in
It was 20 years old.
right. So we had to adopt the curriculum for our students, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't as cost effective, but we were in a situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're seeing success, as you know.
Just a question. You mentioned, Patrick, that there was some misaligned categorization, I guess you'd say, in the budget previously. And that may have impacted the amount of net school spending that would that have impacted the, I guess that's my question, the amount of net
Not
school
necessarily.
spending we received?
Most of these major categories are calculated into the net school spending. It's, the oddball, I want to say like the capital items, interest on loans type things that wouldn't impact net school spending. But in a sense, what it all ties into is our end of year report. So it might skew that data where it shows, administration expenses were X when they were really Y, and then instruction expenses were down when they should have really been up higher, and then that, that impacts our per pupil expenditures.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And then, Dr. Bailey, you mentioned a facilities audit. What is the timeline for that?
We're looking to do it through the facilities rental account. Is that correct?
Yeah, so, again, just to be transparent, I meet with the facilities director once a week in one-to-one meetings. We went back and forth on adding this to local, and again, it was one of the cuts that we had to make and said, we can fund this ourselves through our rental facility funds. Once we kind of made that decision and knew that's where it was going to live, it allowed us to proceed. So at this time, we have asks out to different vendors to see what sort of costs it's going to be. We have an idea anyway, just based on historical audits, and then how quickly they can do it. The idea is this summer when the classrooms are empty and they can get into every room, every space that we need.
Okay.
But very similar to the other audits that we've done. It's really a guide for us
Yeah, well,
for
it'll be
planning.
helpful with
Absolutely.
budgeting in the
Yeah,
future.
for budgeting, capital
Services.
planning, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
Good.
No, go ahead.
I had some comments and then maybe a few questions, but thank you, Ms. Gomes and Mr. Alcroft, and a reminder of the time you put in is obviously, volunteer public service, so appreciate the time, and Dr. Bailey and Patrick. I bring this up probably every time we do a budget, but the total ask of being, I think, was it 4.19%?
Correct.
Okay, total?
Excuse me,
Yeah.
correct.
So that translates to a 6.45% increase for the town. Because the Chapter 70 does not keep up with that, is that correct?
Let me just find that slide. So it's not a 6% increase to the town because again, the additional contribution that they provided in '23 was already 6% above and beyond. So that is consistent with 2024, and what that really boils down to is $96,000 more in additional contribution that we're asking for than last year. If you're considering the required district contribution, which is determined by the state, that's almost $500,000 more. So 497,000 plus 96,000 is about $600,000 more required by the town. But again, that is not up to us. Only the $96,000 ask is essentially.
Right, but it's still an outlay.
Say that again?
It's still an outlay from the town, correct?
Correct, yes. Yep.
So, so in other words, I feel like we need to probably take a look at the, and I think we did this last year too, and had discussions around it, but prioritizing kind of the asks and how you would do that. So I'm just curious, Dr. Bailey, I know they're all important, right? But how would we prioritize those additional asks at this point? Do you know?
It's really hard to say because they come from different leaders in different departments in the school district. Obviously, there are some very important ones like the interventionists, I would say, are probably the top priority. But I think they're all important. So I think if the committee or in discussions with reflection from the public, if people feel like we need to make a cut or bring it down to a certain percent, then I think I go back to the team and we do it together as a team, as a budget subcommittee. I would not sit here and say, I like middle school sports better than this, right? Because those asks are all important to everybody. So I think what has to happen is we go back, if there's a number that we have to get to, we go back and we figure it out to see if there's another way. But, you know, I will tell you that we have been extremely thoughtful about where we're at right now. I can tell you that the asks and those adjustments were probably close to 8% increase when we started this process. And here is where we landed. So I'm extremely proud of the work that the committee has done and the staff. But to say today, this one's a priority, this one, they're all important, and I will take the feedback and go back to the team and the subcommittee to figure out what is most important.
That's what I was gonna, John, you're right. Last year, we also prioritized our asks
Yeah.
through the budget subcommittee. We did that, and
For-
with the four of us.
Mhm.
And that's how we categorized everything.
Right.
So we'll be doing
I
that
just would
again.
not do it in isolation, is what I'm saying.
No, I
I'm not-
understand, I
Okay.
understand. I think,
We'll have that.
well, for me, the priority is the phone system, since we're out of compliance with the federal law. So I'd
Mhm.
probably say that's gonna be the priority for me. I'm gonna have, personally, a little bit of a difficulty supporting filling new positions at this point. So I think I'll probably stay consistent on that because of there's additional costs to that, not just above and beyond the salaries. And I think last year we had that discussion where the new positions aligned with the, I don't want to say it was an anomaly, but in terms of the demographics, the amount of high school tuition that was going to be paid, like we're anticipating that reduction this year. And so I'm just, you know, to use that now as, again, for a second time as an opportunity to add additional positions, I'd be cautious on that, simply because the demographics will eventually turn the other way, and then we're talking about not fun times with the school budget. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Thank you.
Oh, and then additionally to add to that, just thinking of what you had mentioned earlier, which was the exit interviews. And so, you know, if the majority of the time that we're losing good talent because of money issues, you know, that's not going to help the district overall continue to remain, or I shouldn't say remain, but become more competitive with compensation levels to retain good talent. So I'll just bring those points up to the committee.
I would totally agree with Mr. Tevz as it relates to the talent strategy in terms of our ability to attract, retain, and engage quality administrators, teachers. I think that's something we have to continue to engage all of the stakeholders on, the town, finance committee, everybody, because I think as we look at where our teachers are, we have a lot of teachers that are in the upper tier who have been teaching for a long time. Over the next 10 years, whatever it may be, we may see people start to retire. We're going to have to fill those positions, and we're going to have difficulty attracting the right talent, in my opinion. Question on, is the bus related, is the need for the bus because of that whole mile thing, or do we need another bus anyway?
Yeah, it's interesting, I know.
We
talked
got
about
a
it.
number on that. It was a really low number, if I remember correctly. It was something like 20.
No, it was 40 or 40.
Was it that
27.
many?
It's
Something like
interesting because there's some buses that are not crowded at all. And so, and I know we have some routes that are very crowded, but then you've got other buses that I know the bus that my daughter takes is not full at all. There's hardly anybody on it. So I'm not fighting that we need another bus, but I think we need to look at this issue more closely to really, and I know you're working on this, Patrick.
Yeah, I
so,
mean,
so
unfortunately,
criticism,
again,
but-
some of those things are out of our control. We can't change the way that the roads are built in Acushnet and what direction they go. And, you know, do we want kids sitting on the bus for an hour just so that we can spread out the buses and, you know, have the population down? Or do we want to, you know, add a bus and, you know, sort of separate the routes as we can, build new routes? You know, at the end of the day, we're focused on safety for our students. And right now, you know, our buses are crowded.
We're going to talk about about this in our next budget subcommittees. I mean, we're gonna go through every single ask that we have, go through again, take a look at everything, and really get, if this is what we really feel as a budget subcommittee is important, it'll be even more detailed. Here are the numbers, this is why, and then that way, there won't be any guessing for
Right.
our committee here to.
So remind me too, we have the ability to change that policy from, we could go from 1 mile to 1.5 or
State,
2.
state mandates you to provide transportation
Two.
for anyone that lives 2 miles. or
Okay,
more.
but
Right.
our current policy
We can
is
change
1.
the policy.
It can be
Yeah, we
changed.
can always consider changing it.
I mean, there's all sorts of
We
opportunities.
don't follow the
We
policy
could-
right now, John.
We could charge transportation fees if we really wanted
No,
to add a
we give it
bus.
to everybody. Yeah, everybody gets transportation.
So the current policy isn't
Correct.
being followed?
We're not following it. We left it.
Per the school committee.
Per the school committee,
That's
We
right.
wanted to accommodate.
everybody.
And you know, the roads in Acushnet, many of like Middle Road, there's dangerous streets, there's no sidewalks. So there's a lot of good reasons why our children need to take the bus, even if they live less than 2 miles. And even if the committee did decide it was 2 miles and had a hard rule on that, there would still be exceptions, I would imagine, because of where people live and what the conditions are, the sidewalks, the streets, et cetera. So it's all about safety.
And then just one more note on the transportation. I know we're focused on '24, but in FY '24, our contract actually does expire with our current vendor. So we'll be going out to bid in the fall of FY '24, looking for another multi-year contract. And unfortunately, that's going to come with some seriously significant increased costs regardless of the number of buses. So
Oh, yeah, so there'll be no competition.
no competition, fuel prices,
Been through
things
that,
like that. Yeah. It's every district.
Madam Chairman, in looking at the near final product, what impressed me about the budget was much more, which I've seen previously, was the quality of the justifications of each expenditure that was presented, and as Sarah and I both would say, just continue. And when you go through justification statements, in a discussion, there's also becomes the issue of unintended consequences of cuts or additions. And then you go down that path. And this is what's made this process a little, challenging and delightful in a way, because I personally enjoy doing puzzles and things like that. This is one of them. But I just give you a clear example. You talk about the transportation in a bus. We're right next door to the Department of Public Works. And there's trucks in and out all the time. And they also have grinding equipment. They're very acute hazards. So if someone said, well, we want children within a mile to walk to school, well, if they're anything like me when I was a kid, we would take shortcuts. And we would have kids, no doubt, cutting across and through the DPW yard and be in very much in danger. And so that's why the policy, states safety is a major issue. I remember very well when I was a youngster, and I hope people don't like stories. We were near the railroad tracks. And so all the kids, sometimes I used to join them, we used to have an hour for lunch, hour and a half for lunch. So for pleasure, for excitement, that we would stand on the railroad tracks and wait for the train to come and see who would be the chicken to dive out of the way, or when the train was coming. But,
Not you, John.
huh?
Not you.
No, but that was, I'm just emphasizing, that's what students will get into when they're walking to school. I'm just telling you, I hope it's, but just giving examples of what, I love that movie, Stand By Me, was it? But anyway, those are consequences where you have to think about the total. And we also, you talk about transportation, we have a bridge out. It's gonna be out for 3 years. That's taking longer to put that bridge than they did with the Cape Cod Canal bridges, you know? So how are those children going to be able, who live in that area, are going to be adjusted, and how are they going to, get to school? And how long does it take a bus to get them in different ways? So all those things go on in the budget meetings, and and there are other aspects of it. So one thing that you can be assured is the justification statements that and I think they've been excellent from the superintendent and the business manager. But I enjoy the process, and I thought I'd make that addition and I hope I haven't bored anybody with my comments.
No, we just learned something about you.
We're gonna play on the train tracks now.
I would make one other comment, because I know when we had the reading interventionist here 2 months ago, the statistics were quite impressive in terms of the progress that person had made, but I know I did, and I don't remember who else did, but had some real concerns around capacity, right? So I think it was pretty clear that there was capacity for maybe 20 students, but some students might not be getting the services. So, when I think about that, that certainly seems like a priority to me. But
And the thing about the interventionist is it's sort of flexible. So if a student has a need for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and they've had that progress and they've seen that significant gain, they go back to the tier 1 instruction in the classroom, and maybe there's 5 other kids that need that type of intervention. So it's very flexible. It's based on the needs of the students.
And just one last question on the phone service. So it's an $80,000 outlay, and I know
That's an estimate, just.
That's fine.
We're not held to it.
But then, do we anticipate that our phone costs are going to go down?
Yeah, so again, consolidating the lines from 3 vendors to 1 is gonna be a significant decrease in cost. And then the fact that we're just not gonna need to maintain them over 20 years if we do this properly.
It's not gonna be a bus though, Ron.
and-
I mean, like, you can't use the phones and then not have to be a bus.
No. I just was curious what we think the annual savings will be. So we're laying out the 80, but then what did we?
Yeah, I don't have the annual savings pinpointed because, again, the 80,000 is an estimate. It's not locked in right now. We're actually currently dealing with that vendor for an exact quote. But that, at the end of the day, like I said, it's going to consolidate lines, it's going to build efficiencies, and it's going to allow us for flexibility. So if we ever do need to make changes, it's not going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars. It's going to cost us, a phone to add and tie into our system or something of the sorts.
We're also looking for other outlets, but maybe not putting it into this budget, maybe for a capital improvement or something like that. So these are all options that we'll be discussing in our budget subcommittee.
And just one point too that I forgot to mention, the cheerleaders, there's been such great collaboration with Fairhaven High School. I believe they loaned the uniforms to the girls. They shared the mats, the cheers. I know you know a lot about it, but it's just been nice to see that collaboration between the high school and the middle school. And they've traveled as well with the teams for the game, so it's been really nice.
Yeah, I'm really strong with the sports program.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these are all really, it's all important, and as you point out, Mr. Hopcroft, there's a lot to these decisions. They're not black and white at all, and so a lot of thought has to go into this. But I appreciate all the time you guys put into it, and look forward to getting more detail as you guys finalize your numbers. Any other questions? This is a great presentation. Thank you, Patrick and Dr.
Thank
Bailey.
you. And that concludes my section of the agenda tonight. But Mr. McIntyre should just stay up there for his.
All right, so now if we switch over to the business manager's report, and I'll keep this brief. And again, if you ever have any questions on our budget to actual, it's kind of, there hasn't been much feedback on that so far, but you do have the detailed report in your files. But at the end of the day, again, we're in a good spending place. An email went out to our budget leaders just the other day of the amount of spending that they have left and, sort of what that averages over the rest of the year. We expect to conclude spending, mid-May so that we can see where the dust settles, what encumbrances we have left, what sort of payments are left to be made, and then, if there's any additional funds for what is needed or to return back to the town. So that's the FY23 budget. We just discussed the FY24 budget and the progress we made there. Facilities, so our roof replacement is pretty much 100% done. Again, we're still waiting on the louver vents to be replaced, but that's not actually anything that has to do with the physical work of the roof. It's just an attachment. The tower installation that was supposed to go back up with the roof has, fallen through at this point. The subcontractor that was involved backed out, and thus the contractor did as well. We've talked to the town administrator for, an alternative solution to adding the tower either to one of our schools still or the DPW, and those talks are ongoing. Solar project presentation we had. Food services, so again, just to summarize, in the month of January, we served 2,583 reimbursable breakfasts and 11,859 reimbursable lunches. We had a very good workshop the other night, and we appreciate all the feedback that everyone has, and that's why we do it. And we take everything into consideration, and we keep looking into how we can improve the program. And again, I think Shelley is doing a great job, and the fact that we work in such good unison, I have faith that we can improve our menu, improve our items, and continue increased participation in our school programs, our school nutrition programs. Other matters, so in the past we've declared surplus at these meetings, and it was shared that we want to make these items available to the public. So we have done so on February 22nd. All of these items that have been declared as surplus are going to be offered to the public at $1. This has gone out in our newsletters. It's been posted to our website. And actually, I've already received emails for feedback on some items and when they can come look at them, things like that. So that's a step in the right direction. Anything not claimed as surplus, again, if there's an alternative use for it, we'll consider it, but otherwise will be disposed of at our discretion. We just wanted to mention minimum wage, and obviously January 1st, 2023, Massachusetts increased their minimum wage to $15. Per our records, in January of 2016, school committee actually voted or decided to tie our minimum wages to the state minimum moving forward. So we are taking a look at the positions that are affected by the minimum wage, and we are hoping to put together a solution to present for a vote in future school committee meetings, and then consider retro paying those individuals as of January 1st. And then last but not least, high school tuitions. So a big portion of our budget, as you saw, is high school tuitions. So I spent a good time on, making sure we had calculated numbers to the best of our abilities and spun through the contracts to read the fine print and make sure we were following everything accordingly. What was uncovered actually was between FY22 to FY23, there was an increase of approximately 13% in our high school tuition rates for Fairhaven High School. Based on our contract with Fairhaven, that rate is supposed to be capped at 4%. So that's obviously a significant difference. And as a result, the overestimated tuition costs, based on a 13% increase narrowed down to a 4% increase, is $217,782. And that's split between regular day tuitions and sped tuitions. So we've actually reached out to the superintendent at Fairhaven to make them aware of the situation. So if that was planned monies that they expected to receive, that we can work with them to come up with a plan. And we're also dealing with general counsel and our town accountant, town administrator to see what the possibilities are, because some of this is again mandated by law in a sense that you can't prepay things. So that's where it's at. But end of the day, we're looking at a cost savings of about $217,000.
So we have this $200,000 issue here with Fairhaven High School. Are we thinking about not giving it? First of all, who gets to make that decision on what we do with this money that we no longer owe them? That's the first question. Second question is, if we don't spend it and we get it back, does it go part of the school budget or does it go back to the town? Those are my two questions.
Yeah, so again, at this point, All options are on the table. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're following, law and making sure that we're, taking the first initial, step. And again, many things in the school system, paid outside can't be prepaid. So if we essentially follow through with this payment and did not owe it, it could be considered a prepaid expense, which would not be, legal, as far as my knowledge. But we're working with the auditors, the town accountant, the town administrator, our general counsel, as well as Fairhaven, to explore, the best option to recoup this money. And then, we're obviously going to have discussions with the town on, what to do if and when we do recoup this money.
So can I just add to that? We also feel it's important to be good neighbors. This was a mistake, an error on our part.
On the former business manager. Okay. I just want to make that clear, that it wasn't like budget subcommittee or our school.
No.
Okay.
No. And, if somebody said to me, you're going to be down $217,000 that you expected this year, that's a huge hit. So we're looking at all options, and we really want to work with Fairhaven. So like one of the options that we posed to the attorney is, could we come up with a 4 to 5 year plan where maybe 4 kids are free for tuition over the next 4 to 5 years? So we pay what we said we were going to pay because they expected that, and then some type of payment plan. He doesn't know if that's even a legal option. So they're researching all of this now, and there's a lot of people involved in this. The plan is to have an in-person meeting with the superintendent in Fairhaven, myself, our business managers, to settle a lot of this, and obviously legal counsel will be very involved as well. But, the bottom line is we want to be good neighbors too. We've had a great relationship with both towns. I just want to be transparent. The same mistake was made to New Bedford, but New Bedford ended up correcting. Is that right, Patrick? New Bedford corrected it.
Yes.
Corrected it, so we didn't have that issue with New Bedford, but Fairhaven didn't see it either. And I want to give a shout out to Patrick because he's the one that caught the mistake. And it's, it's a huge mistake, and it's to our benefit. So again, we just want to work with all parties to do the right thing here. And I'm open to, listening to any ideas. But we also have to consider that there's another school system that was expecting a large sum of money in their budget. And from what the superintendent said, that impacts the town because the town went to vote on what they were using some of the money for with police and fire. So there's a lot of impact here, and that's why it's going to take a lot of people to really get this settled.
When do you think it'll be settled?
I have a question on that. Did Fairhaven budget for that 13% increase?
Yeah.
Did they budget for it?
Yeah.
Then did they not know or omitted not what the contract in the
Well, I
agreement?
was wondering that same thing.
Right, they didn't show.
So,
Can you
based
just
on,
explain how it happened
Yeah,
so that
I mean,
based on the
it
records-
seems to me, somebody knew, maybe I shouldn't, publicly just getting on this issue.
Right.
But if they budgeted for the increase, which was contrary to the agreement, then it doesn't fall, then the process would be whether they send us the bill. So therefore, it comes on them that they sent us a bill that wasn't accurate.
Well,
Yes,
so
I
falling-
think
falling back to the
we own part of
contracts.
it, John, and I think Patrick's going to explain what
Okay.
happened.
So
Thank you.
essentially what happens, or what I saw, based on the records that are kept, is we would receive the school rate tuition and we would factor it by the contracted factors. So there's a differential factor and then there's just an, inflation factor. We would calculate that formula to get to a tuition and we would dictate it to Fairhaven and New Bedford and say, this is your FY20X rate.
Right.
And that's what we've done, since inception of the contract that I was able to see. FY23 was the first year that number did not fall in line with either the 4% cap or, just the general contract term. So all the other years were correct. It was just an FY23 mistake. Now, what happens with that is they take the rate that we dictated to them and they bill us 3 times a year based on that rate. So the first bill came in, I was not aware of the mistake at that time, we paid it. We haven't received a second or a third bill yet, but at that point, you know, we have the legal obligation to withhold the money that is not owed to them. So the second invoice could come in, you know, we could pay it at the correct rate or whatever they bill us at, and then at the third invoice comes in, you know, we can adjust accordingly. But according to general counsel, the contract, you know, is the contract, and that holds all the weight, and that money is essentially, you know, ours.
Great. One thing is that, to answer Mrs. Gomes's question about that surplus money that was saved, generally will go into the free cash, you know, to the town, and then would be allocated at the for the next budget for all, for the finance committee, you know, make recommendations, you know, and how they would use that money, and right now it appears to be, with preliminary figures, correct me if I'm wrong, is, you know, it's a small amount of free cash that's available to balance the budget for next year. Is that correct? But if there's an additional amount of money that helps our whole, you know, town's budget and meeting all our obligations, including our obligation for our budget. So I, you know, that's the way it would normally fit. So. And it's interesting that, thinking back, when we negotiated and approved the agreement, I made a public statement that I calculated within a few years that we would be saving about 200 to 250,000. And it seems that same figure has emerged. That's what has been overpaid, which we should have saved. So I just find this a little bit fascinating. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all I had. If there's no more questions.
Well, I had one
I find it
statement.
fascinating, too.
I find one statement you mentioned about the workshop we had on school nutrition, and it was still going to deal with it, and I want to thank a school committee member, Mr. Tabbs, for being very persistent in raising the issue about sugar in the in the diet. I think Mrs. Gomes had some questions and apprehensions about the amount of sugar and so what appeared is that I'll read if you don't mind. Is that the United States agricultural officials on Friday proposed new nutritional standards for school meals, including the first limits on added sugars, with a focus on sweetened foods such as cereals, yogurts, flavored milk, and breakfast pastries. And that was basically one of the big questions that we had. So it goes on to say the first limits suggested would be required in the 2025 school year budget, starting with high sugar foods such as sweetened cereals, yogurts, and flavored milks. And they're going to recommend that that flavored milk, for example, would not contain no more than 10 grams of sugar. And it goes on. So therefore, I think when our next workshop we basically be talking about, after we get through the budget, stuff, is basically how can we start early in meeting what the new proposed guidelines are. And I think one hindrance was the milk. The milk we had to have flavored milk, and it had to be, and it would have so many grams of sugar. And they would not give us the reimbursement if we just went with whole milk and not flavored. Whether that can be successfully challenged and saying, look, the new guidelines are going to eliminate it anyway, why are you upholding us to it? So I think that I raise this point because good nutrition and I think both Mr. Tebbs and Mrs. Gomes convinced me that you know, that we have really, we got to focus on this issue, because if children are in poor health, facing some of the conditions or overactivity at certain times of the day because of high sugar, it does interfere with their learning and their school success. And so I think this is a great step forward. And I would have, you know, I just want to just appreciate both Mrs. Gomes, you know, you know, and Mr. Tevz's contributions on this issue. So I just, and I hope we can move forward on it very soon.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think the idea is we are headed in the right direction already. The fact that we addressed the concern prior to this article coming out, and if anything, it will help the reimbursable program. It will help the availability of what types of food are available for us to serve at our, in our school cafeteria, and those are all positive trends. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, for your report. Are there any other comments or
Two things. I have two things.
Okay.
The first is the Distinguished School Celebration at AES was pretty cool.
It was awesome.
Thank you to Mrs. Chesney, Ms. Pacetto. Awesome. It was really cool. And Dr. Bailey, obviously, and Ms. Gomes, and whoever else helped set that thing up. But it was cool.
It was great.
The kids were pretty awesome. Like, I was expecting a little bit more mayhem, but it was really cool. And then, secondly, I'm going to say it again. I am not continuing on school committee. I think you can still get papers, get some signatures. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr.
Until
Hood?
March
24th. I
March
believe.
24th. So there's going to be, I am not continuing. I think, Mr. Hood, you said you're going to try to get your name on the ballot again? Okay. So that's great, but I think that I'd love to see some other people in the town step up and make an effort to public service. I think this was a great 3 years, but it's time for me to step aside. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tebs. All right. So we have some communications noted in our agenda, as always, for you to review at your leisure. We are having executive session tonight. We will not be returning. This executive session is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, the Acushnet Teachers Association contract, litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair does so declare. And votes may be taken in these sessions. We'll be looking at the executive session minutes of November 15th, 2022. We have some side letter agreements: custodial unit, paraprofessional unit, secretary unit, and also security. We'll be discussing security personnel or devices. Again, votes may be taken, and executive session meeting minutes of December 6th, 2022. So if there are no other comments, if I can have a request to adjourn our public meeting this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Tebs?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mr. Howcroft?
Yes.
And Mrs. Downing?
Yes.
7:38.
Great. And just to remind the public that our next regular school committee meeting will be held here in the John DeVars Library on Tuesday, March 7th at 5:30 p.m. Thank you all for coming tonight.